Karoline Leavitt thought she could do what she always does: roll in loud, command the cameras, and rattle whoever sat across from her. The 30-year-old New Hampshire flamethrower had built a whole brand on viral committee clips: interrupt, land the zinger, feed the base, repeat. But when she tried that routine on Denzel Washington during a House Judiciary Committee hearing, she misread the room and the man. What happened in the next minute didn't just stop her cold. It may have vaulted Denzel into a different tier of clout. He didn't swat her away. He iced her measured, lethal, undeniable. Even some of her own bench had to nod. Before we break down the sequence, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Want to see how Denzel flipped a script written for someone else? The room froze. Karoline, who'd been lounging back all grin and swagger, snapped forward like she'd been blindsided. The smirk drained. Even Jim Jordan, normally hands on the throttle, let the silence sit. This wasn't a routine partisan volley. It was a collision, to brands, to worlds, to theories of power. And for the first time, Karoline learned Denzel doesn't flinch. To get why sparks flew, you need the players. Karoline didn't come to Washington to blend in. She came to go Varamaga credentials, polished, media pipelines primed, always ready with culture war accelerant. Hearings were her stage. Cut people off, bend the frame, crank the outrage, chase the clip. Her people loved it. The algorithm loved it more. Most targets, when she locked on, scrambled. Denzel doesn't scramble. He didn't show up in Congress hunting relevance. The man had decades of it. Raised in Mount Vernon, hardened in public life, forged in fights over dignity and access. He'd spent years putting time, money, and sweat behind communities long ignored. He never needed a mic to be heard, but give him one, and the walls. Notice, from day one he signaled he wasn't here to network. He was here to push change, so of course they were going to clash. Karoline barrels in fast, loud, headline-driven. Denzel sits steady, slow burn, surgical when engaged. The hearing topic, civil rights enforcement terrain, Denzel knows in his bones. Karoline tried to drag it into her familiar lane. Parental rights riffs, woke riffs, states' rights riffs, anything that plays in short clips. Denzel watched, waited. The stillness read to some as passivity. It wasn, single quotes, then Karoline overplayed it. After a long riff about federal overreach and tradition, she decided to go personal. Maybe she thought Hollywood guy turned politician would fold. Maybe she wanted the viral clash. Either way, she misjudged. Mr. Washington, she purred, in that sugar-coated committee voice, passion without understanding is just noise. I've been in government long before you thought about politics. She stacked resume bullets, implied seniority, rolled out real Washington experience against people from Hollywood. Her side leaned in. Staffers smelled content. Even a few replicants shifted tone, edging from sharp to condescending. Denzel kept writing. Those who know him saw the signals, jaw set, pen grip tight. Karoline pressed harder. Backroom policy, advising presidents. The whole beltway flexed in the jab. You're a first-term representative who spent your life making movies and giving motivational speeches. That's cute, but it's not the same as understanding how government really works. Paper stopped moving. Heads turned. She'd jumped from policy critique to dismissing a lifetime of work. The underestimation landed heavy. Denzel finally looked up. Karoline, he said, voice low enough that people leaned in. Appreciate you running down your highlight reel. She smiled, thought she had him contained. She didn't. See the angle closing. Since we're comparing qualifications, he continued, lifting a plain folder his staff had prepped. Let me be sure, I heard you. My decades funding scholarships, building youth programs, mentoring kids, none of that qualifies me to weigh in on civil rights legislation. That right? Karoline nodded toward. Activism isn't federal law. He nodded back. So your take comes from deep experience with federal civil rights cases, I assume. Exactly, she said, easing into the chair like she'd just drained a 3. That's when he smiled, the not friendly smile. Seasoned trial attorneys know that smile. Producers who tried to box him in know it. traps sprang from smiles. Like that. Jordan floated a weak, let's move on. No one moved. Karoline, Denzel said, now with courtroom weight, as our resident civil rights expert, maybe help me out. How many federal civil rights cases have you personally handled in a courtroom, under oath advocating to defend or expand Americans' rights? The oxygen shifted. Karoline blinked. Well, my experience is more legislative shaping the conversation. I didn't ask about shaping conversation, he cut in. I asked how many times you stood in a courtroom on a civil rights case. How many, Karoline? No answer. Eyes dropped across the dais, cameras tightened on her face. The unravel showed in real time. He turned a page in the folder. Let me help you out, he said, crisp, clear, and final. Since you seem to be struggling, public records show your courtroom experience on civil rights cases stands at 0. None, not a single case, not once. The words hit like a punch to the chest. Democrats tried to hide their grins. Staffers, in the back, exchanged glances, some barely containing their reactions. On the other side, faces sank, like they wanted to disappear under the table. And Denzel wasn't done. He leaned forward, eyes locked on Karoline, his voice slicing through the silence. But since we're comparing records, he continued, let me give you mine. He didn't rush, he didn't need to. Every word landed with weight. I've personally funded programs that kept kids out of prison, built scholarship funds that put hundreds through college, opened community centers, pushed for policy reforms. I've sat across from presidents, governors, and world leaders fighting for civil rights justice. His voice dropped lower, steadier, even more commanding. While you were prepping for TV segments, I was on the ground. While you were chasing sound bites, I was investing in people's futures for over 40 years. So when we talk about qualifications, let's get real about who's done the work. The contrast was brutal, undeniable. The room felt it. Karoline, who had just spent 10 minutes flexing credentials and touting her so-called expertise, now stood exposed zero real-world civil rights courtroom experience in the very field she claimed to dominate. Meanwhile, the man she tried to dismiss as a celebrity activist had receipts stacked higher than her entire career. Karoline tried to salvage what was left. Well, my political experience is broader. I work on policy, shaping narratives, but Denzel cut her no slack. His voice carried full command now, the authority of someone who just flipped the power dynamic in seconds. With all due respect, Karoline, he said, calm but razor sharp, you just spent 10 minutes telling this committee I wasn't qualified because my work was what, was it? Write cute speeches and community projects. Turns out that so-called small work includes more civil rights action than you've ever seen inside a federal courtroom. Silence. The kind that makes people shift in their seats. The kind that lingers because no one knows what to do with it. Karoline, once loud, smug, and certain now, sat hollowed out. Her brand of quick-fire arrogance shattered in real time. And Denzel still wasn't finished. He reached for another document from the folder. His team had prepared with surgical precision. And since you brought up education, Denzel said smoothly, let's make sure the record's complete. Karoline shifted, color draining from her face. She could feel the next hit coming. You graduated college in 2020, he continued, flipping the page. Barely 6 years ago. You've been in politics for a hot minute, mostly talking culture wars on cable news. Meanwhile, civil rights law has shifted dramatically over decades. Court rulings, federal actions, precedents stacking up year after year. He paused, letting it sting. Me. I've been active since the 80s. Not just speaking, not just making appearances. I've been in the neighborhoods. I've funded legal teams, built programs, mentored kids who had no one else, dealt with systems that destroy futures. And I've stood in rooms like this one, making sure those voices weren't ignored. His tone was iron, now firm, controlled, immovable. So while I respect your background, Karoline, when it comes to what's happening in these streets, what's going down in federal courts, and what these communities are really facing, I promise, I'm a little closer to the ground than you are." The room flipped instantly. The energy was unrecognizable. Karoline, who had strutted in to deliver a headline moment, now looked like a rookie who just got schooled by the master. Her sarcasm was gone, the smugness erased. She tried one last desperate line. "Mr. Washington, I think you're missing the bigger principles." "No, Karoline." His voice cut in steady, unshakable, final. "I think you're missing the real-world legal facts. And I think this committee and this country deserve to hear from people who've done the work, not just talked about it on TV." The Democrats looked like they were trying not to laugh out loud. AOC hid a grin. Jamie Raskin nodded like he'd just witnessed a textbook takedown. Even a few Republicans had that look, grudging respect, realizing they'd just seen something rare. Jordan tried to hurry things along, wishing he could rewind the last 5 minutes. But the damage was irreversible. The shift was permanent. From that point on, Karoline was unrecognizable. Gone was the high-volume, headline-chasing performer. She gave clipped, careful answers, eyes down, never daring to meet Denzel's gaze. Again, when Jordan circled back at the end, asking if she had any final comments, all she could manage was, "No, I think I've said enough." And the cameras caught everything, the unraveling. The exact second her confidence cracked, the silence that swallowed her whole. Within minutes, clips detonated online. #Denzel destroys Karoline trended across every platform. The most replayed moment, Denzel calmly exposing her 0 court cases against his lifetime of action. The second, his closing line, about who really had the relevant experience, but the shot that broke the internet. Karoline, once loud and overconfident, sitting silent, hollowed out, realizing she'd just been dismantled by a man who didn't need to raise his voice to own the room. Analysts called it the cleanest committee takedown in years. Staffers whispered they'd never seen Karoline move so fast to pack up and vanish. No interviews, no victory laps, just an exit that screamed defeat. Meanwhile, Denzel was mobbed with handshakes and congratulations. People called it a generational momental living demonstration of what happens when real experience meets empty arrogance. Clips spread like wildfire. TikTok broke it down like game tape. Legal Twitter froze frames, pointing out the precision in Denzel's timing. Even conservative pundits admitted he didn't just win, he owned her. One law professor summed it up perfectly. That wasn't a debate, that was the difference between resume privilege and real-world expertise. Networks scrambled to cover it. CNN called it a stunning viral moment. MSNBC dubbed it a generational shutdown. Even Fox couldn't spin it away. And it wasn't just about one clash, it was about a shift. A moment where the gatekeeping about who gets to lead got turned upside down by nightfall. Hashtags, think pieces, and reaction videos dominated every feed. Fundraising spiked. Young activists called it a blueprint. Legal scholars called it a masterclass. Denzel Washington didn't just win a hearing, he rewrote the rules. He reminded everyone that the era of empty credentials and hollow arrogance is over. Because when real experience walks into the room, titles don't save you. Talking points don't save you. And if you underestimate the wrong person, you don't just lose, you hand them their defining moment.